Good evening, Little Masters, and welcome to episode 213 of the Prancing Pony podcast, where woolly-footed and wool-pated truants welcome you to Isengard.
Now, I have to clarify that is not us, folks.
That's correct.
And if you are woolly-footed, Alan, I really don't need to know. Please.
Fair enough.
Just
Fair enough.
keep that to yourself. But folks, go ahead and pull up a bench in the common room. I'm Sean Marchese, the real-life Lord of the Mark, and I'm here with the man of the West, who suffers no rival and laughs at flattery. Alan Sisto.
It's only because I'm secure in my pride and immeasurable strength, Sean.
Well, as you should be.
Folks, today we're going to be talking about the third and last part of The Road to Isengard. That's chapter 8 in book 3 of The Lord of the Rings. And this is the part where the three hunters finally corner their quarry, only to find them just chilling in the wreckage of Isengard.
It almost sounds like they're hunting a rabbit or something. You know, they finally cornered their quarry. I guess.
Be very, very quiet.
Exactly.
I'm hunting rabbits.
Yeah. And it's not one of those killer rabbits.
No.
With the big, sharp, nasty, pointy teeth.
Look at the bones! All right.
The bones! All right.
So, for those of you joining us for the first time, welcome.
And please forgive us.
Here at the Prancing Pony podcast, we are working our way through J.R.R. Tolkien's Legendarium, a few pages at a time.
We study the details, we make connections to other writings, and talk about our favorite themes.
And we obviously have a lot of fun along the way, so we're super glad you've joined us.
And we hope you'll be glad you joined as well.
Yes, indeed. Now, before we get back to the text, it is time for me to hand this over to time-traveling Alan for another visit to the North Wing.
Well, today we're bringing you another new installment of The North Wing.
Barlam and Butterbur had a room or two in the North Wing at the Prancing Pony Inn, made special for hobbits. Well, this is our place made special for some of our listeners, to give us a chance to get to know them.
Now, rooms at the North Wing are a little hard to come by, so only our patrons at the Bombadil's Bequest and Círdan's Contribution tiers are eligible. If you'd like to be one of the next patrons to join us, please be sure to check out patreon.com/prancingponypod.
Oh, by all means, please do. We've got a little bit of a waiting list for the North Wing right now, but we're going to get to all of those folks soon, and we're going to make room for more if necessary.
That we will. With that said, why don't we go ahead and welcome tonight's guest to the North Wing, Dave Schuford.
Well, good evening, all.
Good evening, Dave. Glad to have you here.
Good evening, Dave. Welcome. It's a pleasure to have you.
I've definitely been looking forward to this.
Good deal.
Good
deal. Well, we're looking forward to getting to know you. Why don't we go ahead and jump right in? Why don't we start by having you tell us a little bit about yourself? Tell us where you're from, what do you do, and most importantly, what do your loved ones think of all this Tolkien stuff you're so into? You know, are they into it too? Do they think you're a nerd? Wow, that guy, Dad, he's into that weird stuff. That kind of thing.
Well, I'm born and raised in Washington State, and I've been here for, 35 years, 36 years in the current location, but I'm a retired chemical engineer, married, 2 children, 3 grandchildren, and my wife basically indulges me when it comes to Tolkien.
Well said, sir.
That sounds familiar.
She loves the movies, but is not real big on the books. My son and daughter-in-law are just as big a Tolkien fans as I am, so that's really nice to hear.
That's a win.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, now the question we ask everybody who comes to the Prancing Pony, when and how did you first discover Tolkien's works? What was your experience like, and why do you keep coming back?
Oh, dear.
It's a good one.
I actually was thinking, having listened to the podcast enough, I knew this was coming. And my foggy memory is when I was in elementary school, a librarian friend of my mother noted that I like to read. And I was reading books all the time. And she brought a copy of The Hobbit to my mom and said, I think Dave would like to read this.
Yeah.
So she gave it to me, and sure enough, I enjoyed it and read it, but didn't really get much into other Tolkien books until I got into junior high school back in the late 60s and discovered the Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, and of course, Return of the King.
Right.
And I had about 2 or 3 friends, and we just fell in love with Tolkien.
Oh, yeah.
I found my own copies of the Ballantine paperbacks, and then also got a copy or a map. I really like maps, and there was a Ballantine map of Middle Earth. I put up on my wall, and I'd lay back on my bed and just trace the journey from one end to the other. Sometimes I swear it must have been for hours at a time.
Wow.
And it was just, I could kind of walking through it in my, walking through the process, walking through the journey, in my own mind. I could spend hours doing that.
That's cool.
That is.
Well, what's your favorite book in the Legendarium and why? And I guess I'll also ask if you have a favorite non-Legendarium work by Tolkien. What's that?
My favorite non-Legendarium book is The Farmer Giles of Ham.
So much fun.
I really enjoy the having basically an ordinary person doing extraordinary things. But also, keeping his ordinariness, I guess, without things going to his head.
Mm-hmm. Boy, when you put it that way, it sounds so much like Hobbits, doesn't it? I mean, that sounds like Tolkien in a nutshell. Ordinary people doing extraordinary things. That's great.
Absolutely. And not losing themselves in the process.
Right. Staying humble, staying exactly who they are. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Probably my favorite, honestly, is book one. I like the flavor, the kind of the introduction. I like the little hint of hobbitness that he carries through book one.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I enjoy the other 5 books as well, but book one is something that just speaks to me a little. And again, having ordinary people have, some people achieve greatness, other people have greatness thrust upon them, and some people run from greatness as much as they can. And I think Frodo did an outstanding job of wanting to run, but willing to accept it. And
Twice.
That was and that was an amazing journey to watch him and see how that started with him.
Yeah. Boy, book one really is. I think, Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like people are saying Fellowship and first half of Fellowship often to that question as to their favorite Legendarium book.
It is a popular answer, and I think there's something to be said for it being, look, that's where we all started with Lord of the Rings, that's kind of where we all fell in love to some degree. Obviously, we fell in love enough to keep reading.
Yeah, that's true.
But I think you're right. I think it's that hobbitness, and I think it's those little bits of textual ruins you start to get as you get further and further in. You start to meet Strider and things like that. You start to see hints of this world, and you're not quite plunged into the deep end yet.
No.
It's pretty magical.
It really is.
And as far as what keeps bringing me back is, Tolkien's world building is just unparalleled. I don't think I don't believe that I've read any other book. Maybe Dune, by Frank Herbert.
Well, you just won some points from Sean.
That's my other one. Yeah.
I just can't wait for him to make a decent movie out of that.
I've got high hopes for this next one. We'll see.
We will see. Again, cautiously optimistic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like the Amazon show for Tolkien. Cynical, skeptical, but holding out a flicker of hope.
Cautiously optimistic.
Yeah.
I like
Absolutely. But the world building, again, that kind of goes along with the, with the maps. And I could, just kind of see in my mind's eye as we're going from the Shire through the, through the downs, through the old forest, and then up into Rivendell and across the Misty Mountains, and just being able to walk through that in my mind's eye, following it in the map.
Absolutely.
It's a place you want to be in, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just a place, maybe you don't want to stay there because it's a world at war, but it's a place you want to visit.
Yeah.
And that's different from here in what
how?
way?
Right, exactly.
Well, that's a good point. Yeah.
That's an excellent
That's quite
point.
true.
Well, Dave, do you have any Tolkien goals you'd like to share? Maybe tracking down a special book for your collection or going to an event of some kind, anything like that?
I have never been able to go to an event, and I would dearly love to go to an Oxmoot.
Yeah, Oxenmoots are great.
Spent 3 years over in Germany in the Army back in the 70s, and several 2-week vacations in England. And I told my wife, I need to get back to England. I really want to go back and see England again. And to be able to coordinate that with an Oxmoot,
That's a perfect time of year,
Yeah.
too.
That would be outstanding. Yeah,
That would. I mean, it's going to be great.
That would be wonderful.
That sounds like it would be fantastic. I haven't been to one in person yet, and it's on my list.
It really, I sure hope that the world is ready for all of us to do that again this next fall.
Yeah. Now, the only problem, I'm not sure that my wife will be ready to indulge me quite that much, but we will see.
You can send her to us. We'll pitch it.
Yeah.
Suggest it to her.
Put in a good word.
There you go.
All right.
All right, Dave. Well, now it's time for our lightning round of quick questions and answers. You've heard the bit before, so you should know about how this goes. First question I'm going to ask you in the lightning round, since you are a Book 1 fan, who's your favorite Hobbit?
Merry.
Fair enough.
He seems to be more thoughtful, okay?
Mm-hmm.
A bit more intellectual, but not as much as Frodo.
No.
But still, he has a sense of fun. But again, not as much as Pippin, to where he's being a little ridiculous. So Merry, in my mind, hits all the Hobbit high points.
Good point.
That's a good one.
Well, if you've read the Silmarillion, who's your favorite elf from the First Age?
I was thinking about that. It's Glorfindel.
Yes.
And I got introduced to him obviously in the first book, and just description of how an elf lord revealed in his wrath, took on the Nazgul and basically frightened them or forced them into the river when the flood was coming down. And then that got me into going and looking more into his backstory and finding out that he took on and took out a Balrog, which is not something that happens very often.
No.
And then essentially was such a spirit that Mandos, made an exception and sent him back early.
Yeah.
Send that guy back.
And send him back
keeping
early.
him in Valinor.
More work to do.
Right.
And I don't recall in book 1 if it ever described that he was wearing a sword. So it seems like his power was more spiritual, which I guess makes sense. He's coming back, so he's got much more of a spiritual component to his being.
Very good answer. Well, Dave, do you have a favorite poem or song in the Legendarium?
I really like the way that Aragorn sang the song of Baron Luthien.
Yes.
On Weathertop. I know it's just a snatch of a much longer, lay of Luthien, but just that piece it kind of speaks to me.
Mm-hmm. Understandably so. Rivendell or Lorien?
Oh dear. Rivendell. I like libraries.
If we were keeping track, Lorien would be in trouble.
Rivendell is almost always the answer to that one. I think we learned we've got a lot of book people who listen to the show.
Plus, I think the food's better.
Probably
so.
Yeah.
All right, Dave, you have a favorite author or book other than Tolkien?
No, Lord. Well, yes. I'm a science fiction fan, science fiction and fantasy. Dune. I've read Dunes quite a number of times, but I'll tell you, and this may not be very popular, but Robert Heinlein and Starship Troopers.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now
it's a good one.
I retired from the military. Also, I was an armor officer and actually had a tank company for 3 years. And so I have, I didn't jump out of airplanes, so I guess I can't really call myself a Starship Trooper, but I definitely, again, obviously some of his ideas are a little wacko, but I've ran into, I think I learned or read Starship Troopers close to the same time that I was reading The Lord of the Rings for the first time.
Okay. Yeah. Well, those are some great answers. So thank you, Dave, very much. We've really enjoyed having you here in the North Wing.
It was a pleasure, a distinct pleasure to be here.
We're glad to hear it. For now, though, I think it is time for us all to head back into the common room and join the rest of the listeners.
Indeed it is. But thank you again, Dave, and thank you for your service as well.
Yes.
And maybe we'll see you back here sometime at a Questions After Nightfall, maybe?
Yeah.
That's entirely possible.
We'd like that very much. Well, folks, now we return you to the podcast in progress.
Well, it's always a lot of fun to visit with our listeners, but I think it's time to get a good close look at Isengard and Orthanc itself. Can't wait. Alan?
Yeah, I think we should. So I'm going to pick up exactly where you left off last time. And, it's funny, as I was breaking up the readings for this episode, we're going to go quite a ways before we even get to any dialogues. This is all descriptive text.
Let's do it.
Beneath the mountain's arm within the Wizard's Vale, through years uncounted, had stood that ancient place that men called Isengard. Partly it was shaped in the making of the mountains, but mighty works the men of Westernesse had wrought there of old. And Saruman had dwelt there long, and had not been idle. This was its fashion, while Saruman was at his height, accounted by many the chief of wizards. A great ring wall of stone like towering cliffs stood out from the shelter of the mountainside, from which it ran and then returned again. One entrance only was there made in it, a great arch delved in the southern wall. Here, through the black rock, a long tunnel had been hewn, closed at either end with mighty doors of iron. They were so wrought and poised upon their huge hinges, posts of steel driven into the living stone, that when unbarred they could be moved with a light thrust of the arms, noiselessly. One who passed in and came at length out of the echoing tunnel beheld a plain, a great circle, somewhat hollowed, like a vast shallow bowl. A mile it measured from rim to rim. Once it had been green and filled with avenues and groves of fruitful trees, watered by streams that flowed from the mountains to a lake. But no green thing grew there in the latter days of Saruman. The roads were paved with stone flags, dark and hard, and beside their borders, instead of trees, there marched long lines of pillars, some of marble, some of copper, and some of iron, joined by heavy chains. Many houses there were, chambers, halls, and passages, cut and tunneled back into the walls upon their inner side, so that all the open circle was overlooked by countless windows and dark doors. Thousands could dwell there, workers, servants, slaves, and warriors with great store of arms. Wolves were fed and stabled in deep dens beneath. The plain, too, was bored and delved. Shafts were driven deep into the ground. Their upper ends were covered by low mounds and domes of stone, so that in the moonlight the ring of Isengard looked like a graveyard of unquiet dead. For the ground trembled. The shafts ran down by many slopes and spiral stairs to caverns far under. There Saruman had treasuries, storehouses, armories, smithies, and great furnaces. Iron wheels revolved there endlessly, and hammers thudded. At night, plumes of vapor steamed from the vents, lit from beneath with red light or blue or venomous green.
So it's a fixer-upper, is what
It
you're
is.
telling me.
It is. The curb appeal is limited.
It's not really sale ready.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right, exactly.
We need to get a decorator in here.
Yeah, we don't know what the inside looks like yet. We'll get there.
Let's talk about the neighborhood first.
Yeah, that's true, because it is all about location, location, location.
Exactly.
And our guests don't want a long commute. This place
No.
is right near downtown Isengard, so.
Right.
All right.
So let's look at the location. We do get this description right at the beginning of your passage of the Wizard's Vale, Isengard. And if you're paying attention, you'll notice in that very first paragraph you read, Alan, that there's really three forces that contributed to the shape of it today, aren't there?
Yeah, we see first that it was shaped in the making of the mountains, so there's a natural element to the design of this place. But then we get the men of Numenor and the mighty works that they created.
That's right. Now, they're not called the men of Numenor. They're called the men of Westernesse. And
right.
I know we've seen the name Westernesse for Numenor before, but I don't think we've actually done word nerdery on it.
If we have, it would have been maybe all the way back in season 1 with the Calabeth, perhaps?
Maybe, or maybe when we first started Lord of the Rings, because it does come up a couple of times, but I looked in our notes and I didn't see it. So here it is. In the nomenclature, Tolkien says it is meant to be Western plus S, an ending used in partly franchised names of romantic lands, as Lyonesse or Logresse, England in Arthurian romance. Now, of course, you fans of Charles Williams will recognize Logresse from one of his famous works, Taliesin through Logresse. But yeah, that's all it is. It's just sort of harking back to sort of romantic literature of the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
Kind of making it sound like a mysterious, faraway place.
And it does. So we've got the natural shaping, we've got the men of Numenor, and then we have Saruman, who had not been idle in his time, the text says. And just as a reminder, his time there, it's been 260 years.
That's interesting. You'd think it would have been longer, but it's
Yeah.
only been 260 years.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, before I get into this description, I want to point out that we are told that Saruman is counted by many the chief of the wizards.
Not by all, just by many.
Not by all, just by many. And I think one of those who didn't was Galadriel, but I just had to put that out there.
Of course.
So getting into the description of the place, there's an outer wall shaped like a ring connecting the mountains on either side of the Vale. But there's only one entrance, and it's an arch at the southern wall.
Mm-hmm. And there's a tunnel there that goes through the rock. And I love the description of the doors. It reminds me a little bit of the doors, the gates, I should say, as Tuor's going to Gondolin.
Oh, yeah.
The really well-made gates that they're huge and they're massive, but they can just open just the touch of a finger. But it also made me think of the doors of Moria.
Yeah.
Doesn't take a lot of force to open the doors if you're on the inside.
Yeah, these are well-made doors, well-designed. And this is a thick wall, too, if there's doors at either end.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, and it's a very long road to get there, a long echoing tunnel. So it's quite a hill.
Yeah. So the opening of the tunnel leads into a circle-shaped plain, which we're told used to be beautiful. It used to be green, used to be filled with avenues and groves of fruit trees and streams.
Yeah, it was a mile wide.
Really gorgeous place.
Gorgeous. It would have been like a big, gigantic
park.
Like
a park,
but,
yeah.
Yeah. But now, of course, the roads are all paved. There are no trees anymore. They've cut down the trees and put up a parking lot. They're just pillars of stone or metal, and they're joined with chains. And I love this, the idea of these pillars of iron and copper as well as of marble.
Yeah.
This is really industrial, isn't it?
Very stark. Yeah. And to me, I think it's a really poetic contrast that there were trees, and now we've got these wrought pillars of metal and stone.
You could have just left the trees.
Right. Yeah. You've got something that's a similar shape, but you destroyed something that was living and beautiful in that shape, and you put something that's made and is dead, Right. Exactly. And that's really interesting.
That reveals quite a bit about Saruman, doesn't it?
It really does. Yeah. We also see the practical use of the big walls, right? So they're holding chambers and halls and passages. So we know there are a lot of people here, aren't there?
A lot of them. The text says it's enough to house thousands of workers, slaves, and warriors. Keep that in mind. Thousands. This is a big, big place. Yeah. And then, of course, you've got the chambers below ground where the wolf dens are.
Right. And even the plain itself has been delved. I mean, there are these deep shafts with low mounds and stone domes. This place has been thoroughly excavated. Yeah. And having had work done in my backyard before, I know what that feels like.
Yeah. I bet you do. Have they finished excavating your backyard?
No, they're still excavating my backyard,
all right,
actually.
Then. Well, the shafts in your backyard don't lead to production floors like they do for Saruman.
No, they don't.
His armories and smithies and furnaces. I mean, it's 24/7 production right here. Endless wheels and hammers. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to touch a little bit on this last line about the vapors or steams lit by colored light. Do you have any idea what could be causing the colors there?
I mean, I think it's chemical fires.
Okay.
I think he's doing some sort of, smelting down there, and he's got who knows what kinds of metals and chemicals he's experimenting with down there. That's what I assumed it was.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I was thinking some sort of magia at first, but Saruman sort of seems to have left that behind in favor of mechanical.
Just pure science and technology.
Right, right.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know that for sure, but that's how I've always interpreted that. Yeah.
But the colors, it's interesting. We've got red, blue, and green. So at least he's working with the primaries.
Yeah, maybe he's building monitors.
He's building monitors. There we go.
The phrase that comes to mind as we're getting this description is, this is like an industrial hellscape. I mean, this is
it really is.
Just blasted and destroyed and filthy. And you've got these unnatural colors of light. I mean, I know red, blue, and green are natural colors, but you know what I mean? Like, you don't...
Well, yeah, you're sure that the colors that you're seeing here are going to be the unnatural versions of said colors.
Right, exactly. Yeah. You're talking like super bright primary colors, not, like a natural red firelight.
Yeah.
And so, it's really, really brutal. And again, everything is just like so black, right? We get the black rock and the black metal, and it's like none more black.
It's none more black.
Saruman's back in black.
Yeah, he is. And he's about to be back in black.
Yeah.
In the Black Tower of Orthanc, which you're going to read about. We've looked at the property. Now we're going to get the house.
Yes. All right.
Go for it.
To the center, all the roads ran between their chains. There stood a tower of marvelous shape. It was fashioned by the builders of old who smoothed the ring of Isengard, and yet it seemed a thing not made by the craft of men, but riven from the bones of the earth in the ancient torment of the hills. A peak and isle of rock it was, black and gleaming hard. 4 mighty piers of many-sided stone were welded into one, but near the summit they opened into gaping horns, their pinnacles sharp as the points of spears, keen-edged as knives. Between them was a narrow space, and there, upon a floor of polished stone, written with strange signs, a man might stand 500 feet above the plain. This was Orthanc, the citadel of Saruman, the name of which had, by design or chance, a twofold meaning. For in the Elvish speech, Orthanc signifies Mount Fang, but in the language of the Mark of old, the cunning mind. A strong place and wonderful was Isengard, and long it had been beautiful. And there great lords had dwelt, the wardens of Gondor upon the west, and wise men that watched the stars. But Saruman had slowly shaped it to his shifting purposes, and made it better, as he thought, being deceived. For all those arts and subtle devices for which he forsook his former wisdom, and which fondly he imagined were his own, came but from Mordor, so that what he made was naught, only a little copy, a child's model or a slave's flattery of that vast fortress, armory, prison, furnace of great power, Barad-dûr, the Dark Tower, which suffered no rival and laughed at flattery, biding its time, secure in its pride and its immeasurable strength. This was the stronghold of Saruman, as fame reported it, for within living memory the men of Rohan had not passed its gates, save perhaps a few, such as Wormtongue, who came in secret and told no man what they saw.
Orthanc. All right. Well, let's get to the tower.
I'm not loving the curb appeal. It's not great.
No, I'm not loving the curb appeal. It is not a very attractive home. It looks functional.
Good bones. I'm not sure what the current occupant's done with it, but...
No, I mean, of course they're good bones. They're riven from the earth themselves.
That's right.
The bones are. So, of course they're good. So, like Rome, all the roads lead to the center here. And
that's a strange reference, but I like it.
It is. Well, all roads lead to Rome, right?
I know. Yeah, I know the quote, but yeah.
All right.
But it's built by those who'd smoothed the ring of Isengard, but it didn't seem man-made. It actually seems like it's riven from the bones of the earth, as you said.
Right. But it was made by those
Yes,
who...
absolutely. Yeah.
So the men of Westerness were the ones who built this, to be very clear. And then we get that detailed description. It's black, it's hard, it's made up of these 4 piers, which means pillars of rock.
Mm-hmm.
They're combined into one, but then at the top they open up into these horns with sharp pinnacles. And you realize just how tall it is. It says that a man might stand 500 feet above the plain if that man didn't have a significant fear of heights, because I doubt there's a railing.
I'm sure there's not a railing. And if that man could get through Saruman, who's not exactly running like an observatory up there.
He's got a little elevator to the top for $10,
right,
a little sightseeing tour.
Right. And the name, we're told, Orthanc, has 2 meanings. Now, according to this text, we're told that it means Mount Fang in Sindarin.
Uh-huh.
But the Silmarillion actually gives another Sindarin meaning, which is forked height.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Hammond and Skull say that forked height is also given as the meaning in the unfinished index. Either way you decide to translate it, it basically breaks down as Or, meaning mountain, as in Erebor, the lonely mountain, and then Thank, which means forked or split.
Okay. Interesting. But there's the other meaning in Old English. I'm sorry, Rohirric, and that's cunning
Right.
mind. But that's Tolkien punning between his own language and a primary world one.
Yeah. And Hammond and Skull tell us that Old English Orthanc as a noun means original inborn thought, or a skillful contrivance or work, artifice, device, design. And as an adjective, cunning, skillful.
Okay.
And what's interesting about it is that it has a very similar meaning to Saruman's own name, which means man of skill in Old English. Now, of course, that's a totally different Old English root, Seru.
Yeah.
And Sindarin Kuranir means the same thing, man of skill. But
right.
Yeah, in both cases, Tolkien is using these Old English words that mean skill or artifice. Because that's Saruman.
That is interesting. That's right. And then the text tells us that this used to be a truly beautiful place. Great lords had dwelt there. These are the wardens of Gondor. These were high up men leading the nation of Gondor and men that watched the stars. And I find that interesting. Wise men that watched the stars, almost astrologers, astronomers, something along those lines, right?
Yeah, for sure. Any Babylonians or ancient Greeks, you're thinking of ancient people who watched the stars and paid attention to the motion of the planets and things. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Very carefully, because again, no railing up there.
Yeah. They sit down in the middle of that floor,
Yeah,
very,
as
very far away
from the edge as they can.
Yeah, I don't want to get close to that.
No sudden movements up there.
No.
So yeah, it was a beautiful place, but now it's been shaped by Saruman. And
Yeah.
the description here is really telling how Saruman thought he makes it better, right? By doing all this stuff. But the narrator says he was deceived.
Oh, I love that. I absolutely love that line. His arts and subtle devices, and again, subtle, we've talked about that word. It's not always a compliment.
Right.
These came directly from Mordor, and what he'd done was basically build a child's model of Barad-dûr.
Like a Lego Barad-dûr, which I probably should build someday.
A Lego Barad-dûr. That would be great.
Wouldn't that be cool?
Because they have one, you know.
I'm sure they do. I don't know why I'm surprised by that, but I should probably buy that.
That would be awesome.
I should point out, when we're talking about it being sort of an imitation of Barad-dûr, I do want to acknowledge, I don't know if this is a correction or a clarification or what, but back in episode 187, we answered a question in Barlaman's Bag about whether Orthanc was a copy of Barad-dûr or vice versa.
Yeah.
And we said, no, it's neither. You know,
that's right.
Barad-dûr was built first.
Well,
so it wasn't a copy of Orthanc. And there's no way Orthanc would have been a copy of Barad-dûr because it was built by the men of Gondor.
No, the men of Western-Est would never have built that.
They wouldn't do that.
Emulate. Right.
Right. But this passage does make it clear that even if it wasn't built in imitation of Barad-dûr to begin with, Saruman's additions to it were, in fact, exactly that. They were an imitation of Barad-dûr. So little clarification there.
Boy, that's a very good point. I mean, imagine Sauron being the guy that you want to come over and say, I love what you've done with the place.
Yeah. I mean, potential buyer, maybe. He's looking for a vacation home, not too far from Mordor.
Or an investment property.
Could be. Yeah. It's a rental.
You know, I mean, he's got the mouth of Sauron is looking for a property of his own. And, you know, he's just thinking maybe I can buy a place for him to rent from me. Yeah.
Yeah. Why not?
Well, I love these phrases about the Dark Tower, by the way. The vast fortress, the armory, prison, furnace of great power. Oh,
that is a heck of a passage, I have to say.
It really is. It's so
piling
rich.
One thing after another. Armory, prison, furnace of great power. By the way, it suffers no rival.
Right.
It laughs at flattery. It's like, man, this...
It bides its time. It secured its pride and its immeasurable strength. I mean,
of course, it's Barad-dûr. It's Sauron's tower.
Yeah, it's quite possibly the greatest man-made structure on the face of Arda at this point.
Yeah, probably.
In terms of size and scale.
Pure, just immense commanding power.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
And it's worth acknowledging here at the end of this passage that I read that all of this description of Orthanc is as Fame reported it.
Yes.
Because nobody from Rohan has been there for years, except for Wormtongue, of course, who wasn't exactly talking when he came back home.
Yeah. Well, also secure in its pride and immeasurable strength is our website. You should check it out at prancingponypodcast.com.
Absolutely. We've still got all the good stuff there. Show notes, outtakes, Prancing Pony Ponderings, as well as our online storefront where you can get PPP shirts, mugs, stickers, and more.
And one of the best resources we have there is our library page. After all, we love the books here at the Prancing Pony Podcast, and we want to make sure that you can get your hands on any of the books we mention here.
Yeah, we may talk about a lot of Tolkien-related stuff on the podcast, but Alan and I are really fans of Tolkien's books and books about Tolkien. That's why we have the library page, with links to every book we've mentioned on the show.
Now, we do make a few pennies from the purchases you make from those links, so thank you for your support. Now, lots of things can make your workouts hard. Extra resistance, double speed, one more mile. Your socks shouldn't, though. That's why Bombas Performance Socks are built to be nothing but comfortable and supportive.
Bombas Performance Socks have taken all those amazing innovations that make them the comfiest socks around and added their special Hex Tech performance technology.
Moisture-wicking yarn, temperature-regulating vents. These allow cool air to flow in and keep your feet from overheating.
There's even a pillow-like tab to keep you from getting blisters, a special arch-hugging system, and really effective stay-up technology.
I can say they really do stay up pretty well.
They really do, yeah.
Better than any socks I've ever had. Like, oh, wow, they actually stay up. How nice. The extra layer of cushiony comfort that they have on the bottom really gives these performance socks from Bombas the perfect amount of support, too.
And they come in different styles for every sport, with special features designed in to help maximize performance and, as always, keep your feet comfortable.
And like all their socks, for every pair of Bombas performance socks that you buy, Bombas donates a pair to somebody in need. Over 45 million pairs and counting.
And I just have to say, the Bombas Performance Running Quarter Socks have been perfect for this Texas summer so far.
Yeah.
Whether I'm walking around the block or walking in the park, or just running around outside in the yard after my kids. They keep my feet padded and dry.
Yeah. And I love their cycling socks. They stay up, which is no small feat when you're riding. And they're super comfortable, and they keep my feet dry and cool. They're great. Yeah. So go to bombas.com/PPP today and get 20% off your first order.
That's BOMBAS.com. Bombas.com/PPP for 20% off your first purchase. Bombas.com/PPP. All right. Well, why don't we dive back into the text as they ride to Isengard?
That will do. Now Gandalf rode to the great pillar of the hand and passed it. And as he did so, the riders saw to their wonder that the hand appeared no longer white. It was stained as with dried blood. And looking closer, they perceived that its nails were red. Unheeding, Gandalf rode on into the mist, and reluctantly they followed him. All about them now, as if there had been a sudden flood, wide pools of water lay beside the road, filling the hollows, and rills went trickling down among the stones. At last Gandalf halted and beckoned to them, and they came and saw that beyond him the mists had cleared, and a pale sunlight shone. The hour of noon had passed. They were come to the doors of Isengard. But the doors lay hurled and twisted on the ground, and all about, stone, cracked and splintered into countless jagged shards, was scattered far and wide or piled in ruinous heaps. The great arch still stood, but it opened now upon a roofless chasm. The tunnel was laid bare, and through the cliff-like walls on either side great rents and breaches had been torn. Their towers were beaten into dust. If the great sea had risen in wrath and fallen on the hills with storm, it could have worked no greater ruin. And now I'm going to skip a bit into the next paragraph. And now they turned their eyes towards the archway and the ruined gates. There they saw close beside them a great rubble-heap. And suddenly they were aware of two small figures lying on it at their ease, gray-clad, hardly to be seen among the stones. There were bottles and bowls and platters laid beside them, as if they had just eaten well, and now rested from their labor. One seemed asleep. The other, with crossed legs and arms behind his head, leaned back against a broken rock and sent from his mouth long wisps and little rings of thin blue smoke.
Oh man, what terrifying fire-breathing monster is this?
I know! Tiny little compact dragons.
Yeah.
Dragon babies.
Let's see what they are.
Yeah, let's.
So first, let's go back to the beginning of that passage, the first passage that you read, with Gandalf leading the way, passing the pillar of the hand that we saw at the end of the last episode. That's this big white hand.
Which is a lot creepier close up than it was last episode, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. Man. Stained with dried blood.
Ooh, and the nails red.
What do you make of the red nails? I mean, has Saruman just gotten a manicure recently and he wanted to show it off on his sign? Or, I mean, what do you think that's about?
I almost wonder if it's symbolic that maybe the Ents had more to do with it.
Oh, you think so?
I don't know. Maybe, I don't think so, though. The nails were red. That seems intentional.
I kind of thought maybe it's Saruman showing that he's the many-colored now. I don't know. But
I hadn't thought about that.
But they're all red. It's not like he did like nails of all kinds of different colors. Like
red and green and purple and gold and no. I mean, clearly the blood color, right? This is a violent thing.
Yeah.
I was initially thinking that maybe it's just orc blood all over it from getting splattered by the ants.
I mean, that's probably the dried blood that we see for sure.
But the nails being red sounds like something Saruman
that
must
seems
have done.
Like that he did, or maybe his orcs did. Kind of like they did defacing the statue later on in Ithilien.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Defacing the statue in Ithilien, or somewhere between that and the art of the sword hilt.
Yeah. It's graffiti, basically.
Yeah, it is graffiti. I think you're right. That makes sense. I can go with that.
Well, as our heroes travel in, we see some evidence of recent flooding. And by the way, I love the slow unfolding of information in this passage.
I know. It just trickles out like the rills in the stones.
Exactly. Just a little tiny bit at a time, you start to piece together what happened. So we see pools of water by the road, like you said,
Yeah.
trickling. Well, you were talking about the information, but
I know,
the
I
actual
was, but-
trickling rills in the stones that are actually
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
That's great. And of course, now Gandalf stops and they've come to the doors. It's far into the day. It's been misty and gray. It's been gloomy. And now we've gotten a little bit of clearance and there's a pale sun, but the hour of noon has passed. This is already early afternoon.
Right.
So this is really an unpleasant place.
Yeah.
But Gandalf stops. They've come to the doors and it's the outer set of iron doors in the ring wall.
Right. But the doors aren't in their hinges anymore.
Not even close. No.
We see that they're hurled and twisted on the ground.
Wow.
And there's cracked and splintered stone all around, just scattered and in heaps. I mean, this place has been wrecked.
Oh, it has completely been wrecked. The tunnel itself has been ripped to shreds. There's not even a roof in the tunnel anymore. And the description compares this to what the Great Sea might do in wrath. This is violence, or at least the evidence of violence that has passed.
Yeah. And I love that the narrator, or Tolkien, includes, the Great Sea risen in wrath, specifically in wrath.
Yes.
So that there's a hint that there was wrath at work here.
And don't you imagine when you hear the Great Sea had risen in wrath, all I can think of is the downfall of Numenor.
Yeah, for sure.
That's the only time I can imagine the Great Sea rising in wrath.
Yeah, this makes us think of divine retribution. This is like judgment and destruction. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously the ants aren't divine.
No, but they are an instrument.
Yeah.
They are an instrument of divine intervention here, for
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely.
I mean, this is, we see so much Spibimi at work that it's impossible to imagine them not being connected to that.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, let's continue our tour. Let's move into the plain
All right.
itself, which is now filled with steaming water.
Oh.
There's wreckage everywhere. And I remember that the sound of the hissing that we were hearing at the end of the last episode, right?
Yeah.
And we're seeing this just steam everywhere. And it's, just wrecked.
Completely destroyed. The pillars are still visible. They're broken, but the roads are just gone, basically.
Isn't that satisfying that the pillars have been broken? We were just talking about how the pillars replaced the trees.
Yeah.
And now the pillars have been destroyed.
Uh-huh.
Sort of a little piece of vengeance there.
Yeah, I think so too. And the roads are completely underwater. They're all drowned. But now we can finally see, and this is in the part that I skipped, the island of rock and the tower of Orthanc still off in the distance.
Right. And then we're told that Theoden and his company can clearly see what's happened here. Saruman has been overthrown. But how?
Yeah.
They have no idea how.
Could not guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. What force could possibly do this? This must be both awe-inspiring and terrifying.
Yeah.
Because anybody that can do this to Orthanc, to Isengard.
Can do this to you.
Yeah.
If they're still around, can do this to you. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. This has got to be just absolutely terrifying.
Yeah. Combine this with the Huorn forest that went by them in the middle of the night last night.
Yeah.
And the appearance and then disappearance of the wood outside of Helm's Deep. Yeah.
Right. And since obviously everybody knows what's happened, we can talk about remember the feeling that Merry and Pippin had when they were in Fangorn Forest. They just felt this eerie feeling. It just felt like an alien place. It was unsettling.
They
it just
didn't
felt
belong.
creepy. They didn't belong. And you've got to imagine that there's a feeling of that here where Theoden and his men are just looking around and like, man, what has happened here? There's some otherworldly stuff has happened here.
Yeah.
We don't belong here.
I don't even think I'd want to be here at this point. I mean, it's fascinating, but
yeah,
I'd rather watch the documentary.
Totally. And speaking of who doesn't belong here.
Oh, yes. So as they're looking towards the gates, they see these two small people just chilling. I love the description that we get.
It's wonderful. And again, the information just drips out sentence by sentence.
I know.
We see that these two small figures are wearing gray. They're pretty stealthy. You can barely see them among the stones.
Right.
There's evidence of a large meal near at hand.
That's clue number one.
Yeah, it's clue number one.
I mean, small figures is actually clue number one, but then the fact that you get they had just eaten well is clue number two, I guess.
Yeah.
And one seems asleep, which is clue number three.
Yeah, arguably clue number three.
Yeah, absolutely. And then clue number four, well, one of them's just sitting back. And I love how the text describes this. And sent from his mouth long wisps and little rings of thin blue smoke. To them...
Might be a dragon if you didn't see smoke rings. Right.
Well, it might be a dragon anyway. I mean, if smoking is alien, as we'll see it is to the Rohirrim.
Well, that's true.
This is an odd thing to see, but certainly it's clue number four to us.
We know that where there are smoke rings, there are these guys.
That's right. And that's where I'm going to have you pick up.
All right. And I'm going to pick up 2 words into a sentence here because that's how we're doing things around
That
here
is
now.
how we're doing things.
Before the king could speak, the small, smoke-breathing figure became suddenly aware of them as they sat there silent on the edge of the mist. He sprang to his feet. A young man he looked, or like one, though not much more than half a man in height. His head of brown, curling hair was uncovered, but he was clad in a travel-stained cloak of the same hue and shape as the companions of Gandalf had worn when they rode to Edoras. He bowed very low, putting his hand upon his breast. Then, seeming not to observe the wizard and his friends, he turned to Éomer and the king. "Welcome, my lords, to Isengard," he said. "We are the door wardens. Meriadoc, son of Saradoc, is my name, and my companion, who, alas, is overcome with weariness," here he gave the other a dig with his foot, "is Peregrine, son of Paladin of the house of Tuc. Far in the north is our home. The Lord Saruman is within, but at the moment he is closeted with one Wormtongue, or doubtless he would be here to welcome such honorable guests." "Doubtless he would," laughed Gandalf. "And was it Saruman that ordered you to guard his damaged doors and watch for the arrival of guests when your attention could be spared from plate and bottle?" "No, good sir, the matter escaped him," answered Merry gravely. "He has been much occupied. Our orders came from Treebeard, who has taken over the management of Isengard. He commanded me to welcome the Lord of Rohan with fitting words. I have done my best."
Yes, you have, Mary. Yes, you have. Man, I love that. What a moment. Oh, this is so much joy, so much hobbitiness all in this little section.
It is. It's great. And it's, again, right in the middle of this place, of all places.
Yeah.
To see Merry and Pippin and this hobbity moment, it's just, boom. It's just such an uplifting moment, you know?
It is. I think the contrast is what makes it so great.
Absolutely.
You know, the fact that we have this really, all this destruction, all this, what's going to be happening now, Saruman and all of this. And there are Merry and Pippin.
Yeah.
Being as hobbity as they've ever been. And it's just great. But, we start with the fact that the men of Rohan just can't stop staring at them. And then one of these small smoke-breathing figures notices them.
Yeah.
The small smoke-breathing figure became suddenly aware. I love that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I mentioned before, that would be weird. If you've never seen somebody smoke,
oh yeah,
that would be kind of terrifying.
It would be really weird. Oh my gosh, what is this little thing?
What is wrong with that person?
Why is it breathing smoke? Yeah.
Right.
And then again, the description unfolds very slowly that he looks like a young man, but he's barely half a man in height. So you figure about 3 feet or so. And then he's got this brown curly hair.
And he's wearing a cloak, just like the ones that Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas had worn.
Right. And then he bows, and he seems he's pretending not to notice the others, which is great. And he greets the king, and of course it's Merry,
Meriadoc,
son of Saradoc, and he greets them formally. He gives his full name, he gives his patronymic, and I have to say, this is a very intentionally elevated style of speech from Merry. It's kind of funny.
It is,
but it's also doing something very interesting that I'll talk about a few times as we go through this.
I'm looking forward to that. I also wanted to point out, by the way, this is the very first dialogue of this episode.
Yes, it is.
We talked about the long descriptions. Yeah, we're well into this show, and we finally get some dialogue. But
that's right.
Hammond and Skull do give us a little bit on Meriadoc's name that's worth mentioning. In the draft, his father's name was Caradoc, which they say is a Welsh name in accordance with Tolkien's decision that Buckland names should have a vaguely Celtic style. Now, they go on to point out that the first text associating King Arthur with Glastonbury, written around 1130, was written by a Caradoc of Llancarfon. I'm sure I butchered that. It's got that double L at the beginning of Welsh, and Llancarfon.
So I bought myself a Teach Yourself Welsh book on a trip to Epcot way back in college. I didn't read it, but still, I think just owning it makes me practically an expert. So
practically? Is this like sleeping at a Holiday Inn Express?
Exactly. Yeah. And I spent a weekend in Cardiff once, so I'm like, I totally know the language, right?
I'm sure you do.
No, I think it's something like Caradoc of Llancarfon.
Yeah. It's that voiceless alveolar lateral fricative that is absolutely killing me.
Yeah, that double L at the beginning. Yeah,
that double L.
Yeah. Well, so, anyway, apologies to every
all the Welsh
folks
person
out there.
Can tell me how terribly I did. Please forgive me.
gladly take some pointers.
I love the way your language sounds, but
It's
my
beautiful.
mouth
Yeah.
can't make those noises.
Nope. It's beautiful, but I
It
can't
really
do it.
is. Yeah.
So back to the text, Merry
Yeah.
introduces Pippin, who is overcome with weariness.
I love that. Overcome with the reason. I love that Mary kicks him.
That's fantastic. That is
So
wonderful.
Mary.
I
Oh,
love the kick is such a nice touch.
that is such a hobbity thing, isn't it? It's
It
beautiful.
is. And he also gives the formal form of Pippin's full name,
Yes, he
Peregrine,
does.
son of Paladin
Mm-hmm.
of the House of Took. Now,
Yeah.
let's talk about this name Paladin,
Yeah.
Pippin's father's name. The Oxford English Dictionary says that historically, Paladin was a name given in medieval romances to any of the 12 peers of Charlemagne's court, like the
Right.
famous Roland.
Mhm.
The word comes from Latin palatinus, which means of the palace. In this particular case, it means officer of the palace.
Right.
And that historical meaning led to the word eventually being adopted to mean a knight renowned for heroism and chivalry.
Not a holy knight crusading in the name of lawful good with the ability to turn undead and detect evil.
No, but I've played enough paladin characters in RPGs.
Sort of a tanky light healer with
Yeah.
some, sword and board. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There actually is a straight line from point A to point B
Oh, yeah.
in the history of the name Paladin. So in romances like the Song of Roland, Charlemagne's knights were portrayed as like holy crusaders. So that's
Very much.
basically where that idea comes from in modern RPGs.
Mm-hmm.
And it's worth pointing out that just as the Bucklanders have vaguely Celtic sounding names, Tolkien tells us in Appendix F that Tooks have names largely of Frankish and Gothic origin.
Oh, yeah.
So Paladin, which is a reference to Charlemagne's court, definitely fits the Frankish.
Boy, it sure does. And then Mary continues with his very tongue-in-cheek style, formally speaking of Lord Saruman and suggesting that he'd welcome the guests himself if he could.
Oh, man, it's just dripping with like
It
tongue-in-cheek
really is.
humor. So
Oh,
much dry humor, and it's just,
Wonderfully droll.
it is very droll. It's a bit modern, kind of like Hobbit
Yeah.
dialogue often is. And like you said before, it's just so Hobbity.
Yeah, you're right. There is a little bit of that irony that you get with the
Mhm.
hobbits.
Yeah.
I love how Gandalf finally decides it's time to play along.
Yeah.
Doubtless he would, Oh, he ordered you to be door wardens when you weren't busy eating and drinking, I see.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And then Mary's response, he answers gravely. He's like,
Yeah.
oh, no.
He's still
no.
stuck in character, isn't he?
You're right. Totally. He's like, no, Saruman's busy. We're following the orders of Treebeard, the new manager.
That's right. Under new
Yeah.
management. Check out our new menu. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, don't ask to speak to the manager, please.
No, please.
So, yes, Mary very humbly saying he's done his best to welcome them.
Hmm.
And for the most part, he's done a good job, although one of his friends isn't entirely happy.
No, and that's where I'm going to pick up. You're right.
He's not entirely unhappy either, as we'll see.
No, he's, torn between rage and joy, as we'll find out.
Exactly.
And what about your companions? What about Legolas and me? Cried Gimli, unable to contain himself longer. You rascals! You woolly-footed and wool-pated truants! A fine hunt you have led us. 200 leagues through fen and forest, battle and death to rescue you. And here we find you feasting and idling and smoking! Smoking! Where did you come by the weed, you villains? Hammer and tongs, I am so torn between rage and joy that if I do not burst, it will be a marvel. You speak for me, Gimli, laughed Legolas, though I would sooner learn how they came by the wine. One thing you've not found in your hunting, and that's brighter wits, said Pippin, opening an eye. Here you find us sitting on a field of victory, amid the plunder of armies, and you wonder how we came by a few well-earned comforts? Well-earned, said Gimli. I cannot believe that. The riders laughed. It cannot be doubted that we witnessed the meeting of dear friends, said Theoden. So these are the lost ones of your company, Gandalf. The days are fated to be filled with marvels. Already I have seen many since I left my house, and now here before my eyes stand yet another of the folk of legend. Are not these the halflings that some among us call the Hobbitland? Hobbits, if you please, lord, said Pippin. Hobbits, said Theoden. Your tongue is strangely changed, but the name sounds not unfitting so. No, it doesn't sound unfitting.
As well, it should not.
Tolkien's very good at putting names to things, yeah.
Yes, he is. So, yeah, obviously Gimli has just had enough of being ignored. You know?
He's done, yeah.
Like, oh, fine, you're welcoming these guys with all this formality. What about us? What about
I
those
know,
of us who've been
seriously.
chasing you halfway across, 200
200 leagues, right.
Yeah.
So let's do a little word nerdery here on woolly-footed and wool-pated. I think these might be obvious, but I just want to touch on them. It's safe to say you all understand that woolly-footed is a reference to the hairy feet of hobbits, right?
Sure.
From the prologue, they seldom wore shoes since their feet had tough leathery soles and were clad in a thick curling hair, much like the hair of their heads, which was commonly brown.
Right.
Yeah.
And wool-pated is a reference to their heads, their
Yeah.
pates being covered with curly hair. And we'll see Gimli point out in the next chapter that their hair's even longer and curlier than it was before, which those of us who have read this before know can be attributed to the Ent drafts that Merry and
That's
Pippin
right.
drank in Treebeard's home at Welling Hall.
Mm-hmm. So then Gimli sums up the chase, right? 200 leagues, fen and forest, battle and death, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And now you're just chilling here. We see you
Seriously.
eating and smoking, of all things.
Smoking. I mean, the first thing he wants to know is, where did you find the pipe weed? He's really split. He's so happy to see them. He's just overcome with joy, but he's also pretty ticked off.
Of course.
Like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
We've had a pretty miserable time of it.
Yeah,
lately.
and you guys are just hanging out,
yeah.
having a little party. Legolas is right there with him, although
Oh, yeah.
I love this. Legolas would rather know where they found the wine because, like father, like son, remember the Elven King was very fond of wine.
Very fond of wine. That's right. And including the really strong stuff, too.
That's right. Yep. So, yeah, Pippin points out the obvious. He's like, look, we're sitting on a field of victory with the plunder of armies all around us.
Yeah.
You know, like you don't think we got, there's some well-earned comforts here. Of course there are. I do love the brighter wits comment.
Oh, I know.
You haven't found brighter wits in all your hunting.
That's the first thing he says. I mean, he's finally
It's
waking up.
He's like, yeah, hey, one thing you haven't found is brighter wits. It's like, Gimli's insulting them, calling them wool-pated truants and villains.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Pippin's shooting it right back at him. And again, I'm reminded of earlier in book 1 when we saw how the hobbits just ribbed each other all the time. And it showed the deep fellowship between them, these, old friends. And now Pippin's doing it to Gimli. They're old friends with Gimli now. And it's really a cool moment.
I do love that. You're right. That is a real fellowship moment. But I have to admit, I think Pippin might be taking things a bit too far when he says these things are well earned.
Hey, come on.
I mean, Gimli certainly doesn't buy it.
No, he certainly doesn't. He'll hear the whole story soon enough, and he'll get what they did.
Mm-hmm.
So Theoden notes, as is obvious to everyone, oh, these must have been your friends you were looking for. And yeah, as Theoden speaks here, because we've had this very kind of modern, kind of lighthearted dialogue between Merry and Pippin, and even Gimli to some degree. Then we get Theoden come in, and his dialogue is totally different. And the way he speaks, in contrast to especially Merry and Pippin, is another example of something that we talked about in Shippy all the way back in episode 142, the Council of Elrond.
Mm-hmm.
Remember we talked about how Shippy refers to Tolkien's unusual ability to suggest cultural variation by differences in mode of speech. That's an observation in Author of the Century.
Yes, absolutely. We noticed that from everything from Isildur's writings, which were really extremely archaic, to Elrond, and then to Boromir and to Aragorn, and all of those differences, and how he was able to suggest those little cultural differences. It was really amazing.
And while you get sort of a lot of different voices in the Council of Elrond, and that's why we talked about it there, here, between the hobbits and Theoden especially, there's a really strong contrast between modes of speaking.
Yeah,
we did start with seeing Merry adopt this sort of false elevated style, welcome my lords, I am Meriadoc, son of Saradoc, and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And of course, Theoden's mode of speech is always this sort of very elevated epic style. Remember,
it always is, right?
Remember, it was the Hugh Brogan complaint in episodes 205 and 206. So yeah, we've got.
That's right.
I think it's really interesting, and I think we see this contrast throughout the remainder of this chapter between Theoden's very high mode of speaking and then Merry's very low mode of speaking.
Yeah, or here, even just the tongue-in-cheek elevated speaking.
Even just the tongue-in-cheek sort of ironic elevated way of speaking. Yeah.
Right. And I love how Theoden returns to this theme about legends in the real world, like he'd been talking about with the Ents earlier.
Yeah.
And he recalls this time. He doesn't need to be reminded of who these are. He knows these are the halflings or the Holbetlin.
Right. Now, a little bit of word nerdery on that word.
Of course, we have to.
Of course. In Appendix F, Tolkien tells us, the origin of the word hobbit was by most forgotten. It seems, however, to have been at first a name given to the Harfoots by the Falahides and Stoors, and to be a worn-down form of a word preserved more fully in Rohan, Holbitla, hole builder.
Mm-hmm.
Now, originally, Holbitla, or Holbitlan, which is the plural form, is in an early draft of The War of the Ring. And in that form, with the L before the T, the relationship to hole builder is even more obvious.
Yeah.
But here it's
Holbilta,
as opposed to Holbitla. And it's
Right.
even hard to say the two side by
Yeah,
side.
the TL sound is a little unusual. Yeah.
But here in the finished book, we do get Holbitla with the TL.
Mm-hmm.
And the wearing down of the name from Holbitla to Hobbit indicates a kinship between the language of the Hobbits and the language of the Rohirrim, which Theoden will comment on in just a moment.
Right.
And I think it's really cool because, again, when you see the two forms of this word, Hobbit versus Holbitla, to me, they sit on the same opposite ends of the spectrum as the modes of speech of Merry and Pippin and Theoden. So
No, you're right. They do, don't they?
I think Tolkien is really good about bringing all these little philological bits throughout this
Of course.
chapter.
What else would you expect?
What
from
else
him
would
on
he
that?
do?
Right.
Yeah.
I love how Pippin actually corrects the king here. We prefer hobbits. We don't go by that. We go by hobbits now. Yeah.
Right.
But Theoden concedes that name, while there is a change in language, and, he comments on that as you mentioned he would, the name is not unfitting.
Mm-hmm.
That is to say, it fits, it works.
Yeah. He probably thinks that Holbitla just sounds a little bit too elevated and noble for them.
For these people who are clearly
these
neither
guys.
elevated nor noble.
Right.
Right. Oh, that's great stuff. And I'm going to have you pick up there, and we're going to get into hobbits and smoking here. This is some fun stuff.
Oh, yeah. All right. Merry bowed, and Pippin got up and bowed low. You are gracious, lord, or I hope that I may so take your words, he said. And here is another marvel. I have wandered in many lands since I left my home, and never till now have I found people that knew any story concerning hobbits. My people came out of the north long ago, said Theoden. But I will not deceive you. We know no tales about hobbits. All that is said among us is that far away, over many hills and rivers, live the halfling folk that dwell in holes and sand dunes. But there are no legends of their deeds, for it is said that they do little and avoid the sight of men, being able to vanish in a twinkling, and they can change their voices to resemble the piping of birds. But it seems that more could be said. It could indeed, lord, said Merry. For one thing, said Theoden, I had not heard that they spouted smoke from their mouths.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I know you're going to continue the reading, but the idea that they're not inhaling or ingesting anything, they're spouting smoke from their mouths as though they're baby dragons. It's great.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
That is not surprising, answered Merry, for it is an art which we have not practiced for more than a few generations. It was Tobald Hornblower of Longbottom in the South Farthing who first grew the true pipeweed in his gardens, about the year 1070 according to our reckoning. How old Toby came by the plant. You do not know your danger, Theoden, interrupted Gandalf. These hobbits will sit on the edge of ruin and discuss the pleasures of the table, or the small doings of their fathers, grandfathers, and great-grandfathers, and remoter cousins to the 9th degree, if you encourage them with undue patience.
Undue patience. Something Gandalf has never been accused of having, I might add.
No, and he certainly doesn't have it here.
No, he does not. He cuts Pippin off immediately. Nope, we're not doing that. Oh, goodness. So going back to the beginning of that passage, Pippin gets involved here in the conversation, saying he's never encountered anybody who'd heard of hobbits. And Theoden explains, and I love this, look, our people came from the north, but we don't know anything about hobbits. Not specifically.
That's right. We only know about the halfling folk that dwell in holes and sand dunes.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Mary's like, wait, we're not Fremen.
Ha ha! Sand dunes. I love it. Yes.
But yeah, Theoden also says, look, there are no legends of what they've done because partly they don't do much, but also they avoid men.
That's a very good point. Not only are they, nearly invisible and inaudible, they also just don't do much,
which is pretty spot on.
I mean, the records suggest that, the hobbits may say they sent some archers to that battle up north, but the king's records don't show it.
Right.
So let's go to the Tale of Years to put this into context. We first see any mention of the hobbits in Third Age 1050, when the Harfoots come into Eriador. Now, 100 years later, the Falahides enter Eriador, and the Stoors come over the mountains into the Angle, and then further south into Dunland.
Mm-hmm.
Then, circa 1300, as evil begins to take hold. In fact, that's the same year that the Nazgul reappeared. The hobbits all moved westward. Not all, I should say. Most moved westward, many settling in Bree. And a little bit after that, the Stoors left the Angle. Some of them actually went back over the mountains into Wilderland.
Right, and those were the ones that Smeagol descended from.
Exactly.
And we don't see anything more until 1601, when many of the hobbits leave Bree and are granted the land on the other side of the Barandouin, which, of course, they renamed the Brandywine.
Right.
And then about 30 years later, the Stoors come over there from Dunland.
That's right. And if you've played Lotro, you might have stumbled upon some hobbits in Enedwaith, consistent with this history.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And I understand, I haven't been there, but I understand there are also some in the Northern Vales of the Anduin, but that's high level, well above any of my characters. So
pretty cool, though.
But in the meantime, we know that the Northmen didn't settle in Calenardhon until 2510. So even by that point, it would have been 1,400 years since the Horbitlan would have been anywhere near the Northmen. So yeah, stuff of legend.
That's right. Wow. That is a very, very long time.
Yeah.
But of course, Theoden, he's more interested in the smoking.
Of course he is. This is a weird thing, man.
Yeah.
What is up with that?
What's going on with that? And of course, Merry being a hobbit and a bit of a nerd about these kinds of things.
Oh, he is. The guy ends up writing a book about tobacco.
He does. That's right. He does. And so obviously he is more than happy to indulge the king. He starts in on a history of pipeweed. I do feel like I need to just jump in and remind everybody that according to the prologue to The Lord of the Rings, pipeweed was a variety probably of nicotiana, that is tobacco, not the other smokable substance that some people call a weed.
That's correct. And we could point that out. There's dozens and dozens of bits of evidence to strengthen that, by the way.
I mean, he calls it tobacco in the very next chapter.
He does. And in the History of Middle-earth volumes that discuss it, Christopher Tolkien also makes it clear over and over we're talking about tobacco.
Yeah.
There's evidence from Tolkien's letters that it's tobacco. It's all over the place, folks.
As funny as this moment was in the movie, with you know the kind of the lazy eyes of Merry and Pippin and the Cheech and Chong
I half expect
stuff.
him to say, "Can you guys stop at the 7-Eleven and pick me up some chips?"
Seriously, it's hilarious. I do love it in the movie. It's super
funny,
fun.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
It is just tobacco, folks. Sorry.
Yeah. Now, in earlier drafts, Merry goes on very much at length on this. I mean, very much at length. And in one of those drafts, we actually find that it wasn't always Tobald Hornblower who grew the first true pipeweed. At one point, it was Tobias Smygrave, and he grew it in 902 Shire reckoning, not 1070.
Well, and then in another draft, it was brought back to Manor Hall in the South Farthing by one Elias Tobiasson, which is a fantastic name.
Boy, that is Elias Tobiasson, yeah.
Of Mugworth, who was, according to Merry, a much-traveled hobbit. And in that version, Merry says, we only learned the pleasure of it a few generations back.
Ah. Well, after several drafts, Christopher tells us, finally, the passage was developed to a form that my father evidently felt had outgrown its place, for he marked, put into forward.
There you go.
Oh, man. You know, that makes me think of the letter when he's talking about Faramir and saying that Faramir just appeared. But he's going on too long. And if he keeps going on, I'm going to have to put some of this stuff in the appendices where I've already put some of the best stuff about tobacco.
Right.
So, you know, clearly, which he then, of course, moved into the prologue, not into the appendices. But yeah.
Right. Yep. Yeah. So, yeah, Gandalf knows this, man. You're going to regret asking.
Yeah, we're going to be here all week. Yeah.
Very dangerous to ask a hobbit to tell you a story. And he's like, look, he's not entirely joking here. You know, he talks about don't give them undue patience. Like he's pretty serious.
They will go
there.
on. They will go on
totally
and on
will
and
go
on and on. Yeah.
And Gandalf definitely does not have patience right now.
No, he doesn't have time to have
this
patience.
Is true.
Correct. Yeah. And I love the way he puts it, though. Even in the worst of circumstances, the edge of ruin, they will talk about food and their genealogy, reminding us that home and family are very, very important things to hobbits, but also reminding us of how resilient they are.
Absolutely. And isn't it why we love them?
It is.
We were just talking about this, how wonderful it is to see hobbits hanging out here, passed out, food coma, smoking pipes,
loosening the belt a little bit. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Just chilling in the middle of this just wrecked, destroyed, evil place.
Yeah. They're able to have fun and enjoy themselves as hobbits, no matter where they are.
It is a breath of fresh air. And it reminds us as readers, look, if these guys can enjoy some simple pleasures here, man, we can enjoy simple pleasures anywhere, right?
That's
we can take time to appreciate what's really important.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly why we love hobbits so much. It's why certainly one of the things I love about them.
That's exactly.
But Gandalf, unfortunately, has his mind on bigger things. And he says, look, let's table the pipeweed discussion. We'll have that conversation later.
Mm-hmm.
We got some other stuff to do.
Exactly.
And then he asks the all-important question, hey, where's Treebeard?
And that's where I'm going to pick up. What is Treebeard, Mary? Away on the north side, I believe. He went to get a drink of clean water. Most of the other Ents are with him, still busy at their work over there. Mary waved his hand towards the steaming lake, and as they looked, they heard a distant rumbling and rattling, as if an avalanche was falling from the mountainside. Far away came a whoom hum, as of horns blowing triumphantly. And is Orthanc then left unguarded? Asked Gandalf. There is the water, said Mary, but Quickbeam and some others are watching it. Not all those posts and pillars in the plain are of Saruman's planting. Quickbeam, I think, is by the rock, near the foot of the stair. Yes, a tall grey Ent is there, said Legolas, but his arms are at his sides, and he stands as still as a door-tree. It is past noon, said Gandalf, and we, at any rate, have not eaten since early morning. Yet I wish to see Treebeard as soon as may be. Did he leave me no message, or has plate and bottle driven it from your mind? Sorry, that's such a great line. Gandalf's still poking, and I love it.
Was it the food coma or the 5 bottles of wine you guys drank?
Seriously, I absolutely love that. But that's, we talked earlier about the ribbing that Gimli and the hobbits are giving each other. It's the same thing, yeah. So Mary continues. He left the message, said Mary, and I was coming to it, but I've been hindered by many other questions. I was to say that if the Lord of the Mark and Gandalf will ride to the northern wall, they will find Treebeard there, and he will welcome them. In other words, would you shut up? I was getting to it.
Exactly. So yeah, as we said, Gandalf just doesn't have time for the herb lore. Let's get on to more important topics. Where's Treebeard? And Mary says, hey, he's on the north side. Remember, we're still on the south side.
Yeah.
But Treebeard went up to the north to get some clean water.
Right. And the other Ents are with him, or at least most of them. They're busy at their work. And then we actually get to hear the sounds of Ents working. That would be the sound of a near avalanche, as well as the rattling and the whoom-hum of horns. Yeah.
Right. Which leads Gandalf to ask an obvious question. So is Orthanc not guarded?
Oh, come on, Gandalf. You should know better. Now, Mary explains. Quickbeam and others are watching it. And this is where we learn really how well Ents, not surprisingly, hide in plain sight.
That's right. And Legolas confirms this by observing, look, there's one right there, but
can't you all see him?
His arms are at his side and he's standing really still. So you can barely see.
Kind of looks like a tree.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So Gandalf asks, look, has Treebeard left me any kind of message?
But only up to that snarky, passive-aggressive comment about food.
We're all hungry, by the way.
We're all hungry. I haven't eaten since early morning.
Yeah.
But
I don't have time for lunch.
Right. But plate and bottle may have driven this message from your mind. I mean, it really does take on that passive-aggressive tone for sure.
Mary takes it in stride. I mean, I think he's a little bit defensive here, but he pretty much takes it in stride. Just like I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
I'll get there.
Hang on.
I've been hindered by many other questions.
Right. Exactly. And he tells him that Theoden and Gandalf are to meet Treebeard at the northern wall.
Yeah. And fortunately, that's also where you'll find food. And I didn't read that part. Discovered by yours truly, Mary says.
That's right. So quit your complaining, Gandalf.
Right.
You will
knock it off, man.
I'm taking care of you.
Yeah.
I got you, fam.
That's right. I got you, fam. I like that. And Gandalf, of course, approves laughingly. And that is where you're going to pick up to finish the chapter.
All right. Well, Theoden, will you ride with me to find Treebeard? We must go round about, but it is not far. When you see Treebeard, you will learn much, for Treebeard is Fangorn, and the eldest and chief of the Ents. And when you speak with him, you will hear the speech of the oldest of all living things. I will come with you, said Theoden. Farewell, my hobbits. May we meet again in my house. There you shall sit beside me and tell me all that your hearts desire, the deeds of your grandsires as far as you can reckon them, and we will speak also of Tobald the Old and his herb lore. Farewell. The hobbits bowed low. So that is the King of Rohan, said Pippin in an undertone. A fine old fellow, very polite.
So Pippin. That is so Pippin. I love that. But we'll go back to the beginning of that passage. So Gandalf asks Theoden, ride with me to find Treebeard. You're going to learn a lot if you do, because Treebeard is Fangorn, and he's the oldest of all living things. Now, we've touched on that a few times. This makes me remember Christopher Tolkien's line about his father being prone to or being given to, what did he call it? Excess of hyperbole
That's right.
something.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So he may not be the oldest of all living things, but he's really, really, really old, and you will learn a lot. Yeah.
And of course, with an opportunity like that, who's going to say no, right? So Theoden agrees. I mean, this is like the ultimate tourist attraction. See the oldest of all living things.
Step right up.
And it's right here by the side of the road. They don't often move the tourist attraction closer to the road.
Right next to the bearded lady. Right. Gimli gets all excited.
As he would.
Yeah.
And then we get Theoden's marvelous farewell in, again, this elevated dialogue where he's describing these plain hobbity things in that elevated mode of speech.
And it's not tongue-in-cheek the way Mary has done earlier.
No,
right.
It's not. But it shows a contrast, which does make the Hobbit's language seem almost comical by contrast.
It does. You're right.
But it's very sincere. I mean, he's inviting them to his home.
Yeah.
He says, look, you guys come there. We'll talk as much as you want about genealogy and herb lore.
Yeah. I love that. It's so, it's heartwarming.
It is.
I love to see Theoden opening up like this. You know, this is the guy who just a couple chapters ago was still totally under the control of Wormtongue and barely able to even stand up.
Yeah. It makes him seem very down to earth, doesn't it?
It does. Very.
That he's able to connect with these hobbits that, yes, they're aristocrats in their own land, but he doesn't know that. He doesn't have any reason to treat these two guys with respect.
No.
Maybe he's worried they'll blow smoke at him. I don't know. But
maybe. They're little baby dragons, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, he does that. And then Pippin's closing line, I absolutely adore. Very polite. It's just such a hobbity observation.
It really is. It's
a fine old fellow, very polite. Not, scion of kings, like, he's a nice old fellow.
He's quite a scion of kings, that Theoden guy. Yeah, no. You're right. It's very hobbity. It's got such a strong hobbit feel. I'm a little surprised that Tolkien doesn't have Mary saying that line, given that Mary,
given his later relationship with Theoden.
Exactly. Yeah, I know it's just a little thing, but it kind of like surprised me. Like, oh wow, I would have expected that to be Mary, but still,
that's an interesting point. I wonder if he wrote that not knowing where Mary was going to end up.
Maybe that's.
But
true.
He had so many opportunities to go back and edit it, so I wonder.
True. And it doesn't change significantly. It just maybe makes Mary's connection a little, forecasts it a little bit. Predicts it.
Yeah, I think so. And I think the fact that it's not Mary tells us that, look, any hobbit could appreciate a king like Theoden. It's not a very good point. It's not some special connection Mary has with him. I mean, he does have a special connection, but, Pippin could have had a connection like that too.
That's true. That's true. Well, you know what? If we encourage him with undue patience, Bartleman will keep sending us mail.
Yes, he will.
Granted, that's rather the point. But once we are done, the talk still continues all night long at the Prancing Pony.
Yes, it does. Our amazing listener community keeps the conversation going in all of our social media spaces. At our common room on Facebook, you'll find comments, questions, corrections, and more on every episode, as well as updates from us throughout the week. Just look for the Prancing Pony Podcast on Facebook.
And be sure to follow both the page and the group. The page lets us keep you up to date on the latest PPP happenings, but the group, well, that gives you a great chance to discuss Tolkien with your fellow listeners.
Indeed it does. And of course, we also have some really good discussions going on over on Reddit. You can find us there at r/prancingponypod. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram, both with the handle @prancingponypod. And if you're enjoying the show, please share us and consider giving us a review on Apple Podcasts.
Now, this episode airs on June 13th, and our season's going to wrap up in less than a couple of months. But if you're paying attention to the episode numbers, a little math tells you that episode 222 isn't too far away.
As a matter of fact, it's going to be popping up in the first or second episode of next season.
That's right.
Now, you might remember the fun we had with our 11th episode, going over the highlights of our first 110 shows.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we still haven't figured out what to call our 222nd episode.
No, we haven't.
There's got to be a Hobbit name for that.
There's got to be.
But it will also be a highlight show with selections chosen by you.
That's right. So be thinking of your favorite moments from episode 112 through to the end of this season and send them into Bartleman. You're going to need to include an episode number, a starting timestamp, and a brief note describing the segment.
After all, our digital ads vary in quantity and length, so if you just give us the timestamp, we might be off by a minute or two.
Right.
Help us out, and if we use your selected clip on the show, we'll give you a shout-out. And thanks in advance for helping us celebrate our 11 times 2.
There you go. And finally, if you want exclusive content, postscripts, full bonus episodes, live Discord events with Sean and me, and episodes without the digital ads, well, check out our Patreon at patreon.com/prancingponypod, where you can support the show by joining the Fellowship of the Podcast. Now, let's see what messages Barnum has brought us tonight. Sean.
All right. Well, first up, Marcus F. asks us, I'm still working my way through the back catalog until I get caught up. Nearly there, he says. And I'm in the midst of episode 175 and your discussion of the Argonath. I thought Alan's theory about why the statues were holding axes was interesting. My personal theory was that it was a callback to the Axe of Tuor. By placing axes in their hands, the Númenóreans of the Third Age were tying in their ancient history, since that was one of the relics lost in the drowning. What do you guys think?
Well, I suppose we should probably start by recapping my theory, which, I don't know, theory might be giving it too much credit. It was really just more of an interesting speculation. I'd started by recalling that the Argonath were built by King Rohirrim II, formerly the regent known as Minalcar. He had a special affinity for the Northmen and, quote, desired to strengthen the bond between Gondor and the Northmen. So much so that, quote, he took many of them into his service and gave to some high rank in his armies. I then wondered if it was possible that the Northmen mentioned here, like the Northmen of the primary world, fought often with the axe instead of the sword, and that maybe this was a way of acknowledging that somehow. Now, look, I know that's a stretch. I'm connecting primary world with secondary world, but I based that in part, at least, on the Gothic names of these Northmen. Rohirrim showed favor to a leader named Vidugavia, which was Gothic for woodlord. His daughter was Vidumavi, Gothic for wood maiden, and one of his descendants several hundred years later was Marhuini, Gothic for horse soldier, the one who led his people north to the Vales of Anduin, the ones that would become the Eotheod. But it was pure speculation. I was simply tying in primary world Northmen with Tolkien's Northmen.
Well, I'd say it was a speculation based on pretty solid textual and linguistic evidence.
I hope so. It was just an educated guess.
Yeah. I mean, Tolkien is frequently drawing intentional connections between the Northmen of the primary world and the Northmen in his world, but we don't have time for all that right now. Marcus has an interesting in-universe suggestion, though. Tuor, the grandfather of the first king of Númenor, Elros, did favor fighting with his great axe, which was called Dromborleg.
Yeah.
In the Book of Lost Tales Part 2, now remember that's the second volume in History of Middle-earth, we read that Dromborleg means thudder sharp, and was called this because using Dromborleg, Tuor smote both a heavy dint as of a club and cleft as a sword.
Well, that's right. Now, also in the Book of Lost Tales, in the Fall of Gondolin, we read that Tuor managed to slay not one, not two, but 3 Balrogs and a Lord of the Orcs with Dromborleg. So it is no wonder that his descendants took it to Númenor as an heirloom. So in Unfinished Tales, a description of the island of Númenor, we read that the king and most of the great chieftains possessed swords as heirlooms of their fathers, and at times they would still give a sword as a gift to their heirs. Now, that passage has a footnote giving us a list of several of these heirlooms. The most famous was the king's sword, Aronruth itself, which, if you remember, was Thingol's sword. But then we get this list: the Ring of Barahir, the Great Axe of Tuor, father of Eärendil, and the Bow of Bregor of the House of Beor.
Now, out of the heirlooms on that list, only the Ring of Barahir survived the downfall of Númenor, and that's because Taurelendil gave it to his daughter Silmarien, who in turn gave it to her son Valandil, who was the first lord of Andúnie, and it got handed down through the line of these lords who ended up being the faithful, and of course it was carried to Middle-earth when they escaped the downfall.
Right.
But that means that Dromborleg, along with Aronruth, was apparently lost.
Yeah.
So could Rohirrim II have been thinking back to his ancestors, specifically Tuor, in giving the Argonath statues of Isildur and Anarion axes instead of swords?
Maybe, yeah.
It's possible. I mean, it seems feasible.
Oh, yeah.
Although I do have to keep in mind that Tuor was only one out of many notable ancestors of the Númenórean kings, and
true,
we're talking like thousands of years previously. I mean, I have to ask, why not have them hold out a sword in honor of Turgon? Or why not have them hold a Silmaril in honor of Beren? Maybe the axes are a nod to Tuor, but then it begs the question of why? Why include that nod to Tuor, of all people, in this particular monument? And I just don't know that we have an answer to that question.
No.
I don't know.
Why the axe and not anything else? Why Tuor? Why only Tuor?
Yeah. I mean, I get that he was a sire, going back many generations.
Sure.
But
so were some of those others, yeah.
Right. But why this monument? That's what still kind of sticks with me. And so I don't know. I still like your explanation, but I don't know. What do you say?
Well, I mean, like you said, you can't rule it out. I mean, it certainly is feasible.
True. Yeah.
It would be, I have to say, a kind of interesting choice, given what we read in Unfinished Tales about swords being given as gifts to the heirs of kings. I mean, in fact, the sentence right after the one I'd read earlier says, a new sword was made for the king's heir to be given to him on the day on which this title was conferred. Well, here we have a statue of the king and the king's heir, and there's not a sword in sight. So
That's a good point, yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe it just comes down to whether Remendikil was feeling nostalgic about Tuor.
Yeah, I agree. And again, I don't see a compelling reason to understand why he would be nostalgic about Tuor specifically. I mean, and again, look, like you said, we can't rule it out.
No. If he'd been allying with the elves, let's say, instead of the Northmen, then maybe I could lean with Tuor.
Right. Because of his connection to the elves. Absolutely. He was an ambassador of men to the elves, for sure.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, thinking about primary world history, like a Roman emperor might have a nostalgic statue commissioned depicting them as Hercules, but they always had a reason for it. They always had a specific reason for wanting to make people connect them with Hercules. And it's just that reason that I'm struggling with. But I don't know. Again, I can't rule it out. I think it's a cool suggestion.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
I do still like your theory, though, Alan.
Oh, thank you.
Well, my pleasure. What do you think? Do we have time for one more?
I believe we do. Matan K in Israel wrote to us last year to say that he and his sister had been enjoying the podcast and that he had a question from the two of them. Which ring is more important, the One Ring or the Ring of Barahir? I would like to hear your thoughts. Sean, what are your thoughts?
All right. Well, gosh.
Yeah.
Well, the Second Age ends when the One Ring is taken and Sauron is cast down. And the Third Age ends when the One Ring is destroyed. So I kind of have a feeling we'll land on the One Ring being the more significant ring, just because, it's just more influential and more powerful.
True, more important to history. But, in a way, we're comparing apples to oranges here. Important is a word that, well, arguably it's a subjective word. What's important to one person may not be important to another. And then there's the time frame. What's important in one time may not be important in another.
True.
At its time, the Ring of Barahir was very important, starting in First Age 455 when Finrod first gave it to Barahir after the Dagor Bragollach. Now, let's take a look at that moment after the siege of Angband was ended. The sons of Finarfin bore most heavily the brunt of the assault, and Angrod and Agnor were slain. Beside them fell Bregalas, lord of the house of Beor, and a great part of the warriors of that people. But Barahir, the brother of Bregalas, was in the fighting further westward, near to the pass of Sirion. There, King Finrod Felagund, hastening from the south, was cut off from his people and surrounded, with small company in the fen of Serek, and he would have been slain or taken. But Barahir came up with the bravest of his men and rescued him, and made a wall of spears about him, and they cut their way out of the battle with great loss. Thus Felagund escaped, and returned to his deep fortress of Nargothrond. But he swore an oath of abiding friendship and aid in every need to Barahir and all his kin, and in token of his vow, he gave to Barahir his ring.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
So it was a very important symbol of unity between Finrod and the Lord of the House of Beor. And it would become even more important 5 years later when Beren comes into possession of the ring.
Yeah.
I'm going to read that passage about Beren's chase of the orcs that killed his father and the other outlaws in Dorthonion. First, therefore, he pursued the orcs that had slain his father and his kinsmen, and he found their camp by night at Rivel's well, above the fen of Serech. And because of his woodcraft, he came near to their fire unseen. There their captain made boast of his deeds, and he held up the hand of Barahir that he had cut off as a token for Sauron that their mission was fulfilled. And the ring of Felagund was on that hand. Then Beren sprang from behind a rock and slew the captain, and taking the hand and the ring, he escaped, being defended by fate, for the orcs were dismayed and their arrows wild.
And then 5 years after that, the ring becomes even more important. First, after Beren had been given his impossible task by Thingol to recover a Silmaril from the crown of Morgoth, Beren was headed towards Nargothrond, and I'll pick up from there. Upon all that plain the elves of Nargothrond kept unceasing watch, and every hill upon its borders was crowned with hidden towers, and through all its woods and fields archers ranged secretly and with great craft. Their arrows were sure and deadly, and nothing crept there against their will. Therefore, ere Beren had come far upon his road, they were aware of him, and his death was nigh. But knowing his danger, he held ever aloft the ring of Felagund, and though he saw no living thing, because of the stealth of the hunters, he felt that he was watched, and cried often aloud, I am Beren, son of Barahir, friend of Felagund, take me to the king." Therefore the hunters slew him not, but assembling they waylaid him and commanded him to halt. But seeing the ring, they bowed before him, though he was in evil plight, wild and wayworn.
Well, and you all recall the rest of that story.
Yeah.
Of course, Finrod fulfilled his oath of abiding friendship and aid in every need to Barahir and all his kin. And of course, he went with Beren.
Yep.
And after they were captured by Sauron and all of their companions killed by Sauron's werewolves, we read this. When the wolf came for Beren, Felagund put forth all his power and burst his bonds, and he wrestled with the werewolf and slew it with his hands and teeth. Yet he himself was wounded to the death. Then he spoke to Beren, saying, "I go now to my long rest in the timeless halls beyond the seas and the mountains of Aman. It will be long ere I am seen among the Noldor again, and it may be that we shall not meet a second time in death or life, for the fates of our kindreds are apart. Farewell." He died then in the dark in Tol and Garhoth, whose great tower he himself had built. Thus King Finrod Felagund, fairest and most beloved of the house of Finwë, redeemed his oath, but Beren mourned beside him in despair. So, yeah. Knowing all of that, I would say the Ring of Barahir is definitely important.
Very, very important indeed. I mean, without the Ring of Barahir, almost certainly Beren's quest for a Silmaril fails. Elwing is never born. Eärendil never completes his quest. Middle-earth probably doesn't even survive the first age. It's like when we talked about what happens if there are no dwarves,
right? Yeah, exactly.
It's the same kind of thing. Now, granted, the importance of the Ring of Barahir really, really faded after that. Through Dior, then Elwing, and then, of course, Elros, the ring did find its way to Numenor, and then, as we talked about in the last question, ended up as an heirloom in the hands of the faithful. But we don't really hear anything about it until the last king of the Arthedain, Arvedwi, gave the ring to the Losoth in 1975 in the Third Age. But by that point, well, its importance had really been eclipsed by that other ring, huh?
Yeah, that other ring was the one kind of moving and shaking events in Middle-earth at the time.
Yeah.
And that other ring truly shaped the later Second and Third Ages.
Oh, yeah.
Around the Second Age, 1600, we read that secretly Sauron made one ring to rule all the others, and their power was bound up with it, to be subject wholly to it, and to last only so long as it too should last. And much of the strength and will of Sauron passed into that one ring, for the power of the elven rings was very great, and that which should govern them must be a thing of surpassing potency. And Sauron forged it in the Mountain of Fire in the Land of Shadow. And while he wore the one ring, he could perceive all the things that were done by means of the lesser rings, and he could see and govern the very thoughts of those that wore them. And even though the three elven rings would remain unsullied, they were still subject to the one ring.
That's right, they were. And the evil that he achieved after twisting 9 men into the Nazgul was significant. So again, we're going to see more of the importance of the one ring. Now Sauron's lust and pride increased until he knew no bounds, and he determined to make himself master of all things in Middle-earth, and to destroy the elves, and to compass, if he might, the downfall of Numenor. He brooked no freedom nor any rivalry, and he named himself Lord of the Earth. Sorry, I'm just going to roll my eyes at that, but yeah, that's what he did. A mask he still could wear, so that if he wished, he might deceive the eyes of men, seeming to them wise and fair. But he ruled rather by force and fear, if they might avail. And those who perceived his shadow spreading over the world called him the Dark Lord, and named him the Enemy. And he gathered again under his government all the evil things of the days of Morgoth that remained on earth or beneath it, and the orcs were at his command and multiplied like flies. Thus the Black Years began, which the elves call the Days of Flight. In that time many of the elves of Middle-earth fled to Lindon, and thence over the seas never to return, and many were destroyed by Sauron and his servants. And we go on to read that nearly all men in the east and south were under Sauron's control. He was to them, quote, both king and god, and they feared him exceedingly.
Yeah, and to be fair, they did get a reprieve when he was captured by Ar-Pharazôn and taken to Numenor as a prisoner, and I'm making air quotes when I say that.
Big air quotes there, yeah.
But then look at the damage he did while he was there. I mean,
seriously.
Within just a short amount of time, he had the Numenorians conducting human sacrifice, Satan worship, Melkor worship, but same thing. Yeah. Dogs and cats living together, all that stuff, and causing the eventual downfall of Numenor itself.
Yeah.
Not to mention making the world round.
Yeah. No more flat Arda anymore. That's right.
Yeah, exactly, as a result of Sauron's actions. And much of this was because of the power of the One Ring. As Tolkien himself tells us in letter number 211, Sauron's personal surrender, and Tolkien is making air quotes when he says that.
Yeah, that's right.
To Ar-Pharazôn was voluntary and cunning. He got free transport to Numenor. He naturally had the One Ring, and so very soon dominated the minds and wills of most of the Numenorians.
Right. The ring being the big factor behind his ability to cause that. So, you know, again, the ring continues to play this huge role. And then you have the entire years-long battle and siege that marked the end of the Second Age. You know, that concludes with the fall of Sauron and the capture of the One Ring. And like the Ring of Barahir at the end of the First Age, it sort of fell off the page for a long time, didn't it?
It did. But while the return of the Ring of Barahir is significant in its way, I mean, of course, it confirms Aragorn's heritage and it shows the legitimacy of his claim to be the king, the One Ring is the central thing around which the end of the Third Age revolves.
That's true.
The quest to destroy the One Ring is the story, after all. And if it wasn't destroyed, well, the Ring of Barahir wouldn't mean a whole lot then, would it?
No, and I think really that's the measuring stick, isn't it? At least in the Third Age. I mean, if the Ring of Barahir is lost or destroyed, does that change anything about the One Ring? The answer is clearly no.
Right.
With the One Ring, Sauron takes over Middle-earth and doesn't give a hoot about the Ring of Barahir.
Right.
Conversely, if the One Ring is not destroyed, well, the Ring of Barahir becomes essentially meaningless and certainly powerless.
Right, because without Sauron's destruction, Aragorn can't ascend to the throne with or without that ring.
You're king of nothing, man.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So, but, you know, honestly, let's not forget the importance in the First Age of the Ring of Barahir.
Sure.
Because it really was key to the success of Beren and Lúthien's quest, the result of which eventually led to Elwing and Eärendil and the capture of Morgoth.
Absolutely, and that's why it's a great question. And I think answering this question has been a really good exercise in remembering just how important the Ring of Barahir really was back in the First Age, and still retains some importance as a symbol. But at the end of the day, the One Ring is the one that the fate of Middle-earth really hinges on.
That's right. Well, folks, that wraps it up for another episode of the Prancing Pony Podcast. Please be sure to join us again next week when we join our friends for a feast.
Proper man food, as Treebeard calls it.
Oh, yeah.
Now, folks, as always, we want to take a moment to thank some truly important people, our patrons at the Círdan's contribution tier. I'll start with DeMay in Alaska, James in Virginia, Tamsin in Minnesota, Chad in Texas, Lance in New Jersey, Paul in Colorado, Jerry in Texas, Bruce in California, Mario in Utah, Seth in Texas, Ella in California, Joseph in Texas, and Kathy from North Carolina.
And then we have Lori from Washington, Josh in Oklahoma, Carlos in California, Brian from the UK, Cameron in Nevada, Ned from Connecticut, Jerry from Washington, Nick from Wisconsin, Paul from Buckland, and Ryan from Alaska. Thank you all so much for your support. Now, we also want to thank the team that helps make this show better. That includes our research assistants, as well as our Barlaman, Becca Davis, producer Jordan Rennells, social media manager Casey Hilsey, event and Patreon community coordinator Katie McKenna, and website guru Phil Dean.
This show would not be what it is without our supporters and our teammates, so thank you all.
Absolutely.
Now be sure you don't miss any episodes of the Prancing Pony Podcast. Subscribe to the show through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app.
And one last thing as always, don't forget to send your thoughts, comments, and most of all, the deeds of your grandsires to Barlaman at theprancingponypodcast.com.
Barlaman's a lot more reliable these days, but we do get a lot of mail. So we'll get to you as soon as we can, and your comment or question may be featured on a future episode.
As always, though, this has been far too short a time to spend among such excellent and admirable listeners. But until next time.
Farewell, friends.